Good morning and welcome everybody. I think I'll just give you a couple of moments as you're all signing in to this morning's webinar, the LinkedIn Era Profiling Your Career with Impact. Just wait just a couple of moments to make sure you're all online before we get started. And I can see one of you have already jumped onto the chat feature, so thank you. Good morning to you too, Cecile. Nice to have you with us this morning. And welcome to all of you. We have a number of our network both joining us from Melbourne and Sydney, so thank you for joining. And you're joining myself. I'm Donna Burr, partner in Melbourne, sort of placing interim executive assignments, and here with my colleague Jacinta Will, and also Melbourne, and our two partners in Sydney, Carolyn McAuliffe and Lisa McAuliffe, all of which you know. And I'll introduce the lovely Renata in a moment, but thank you for joining us today. For our friends who have joined us from Melbourne, we hope that you and your families are safe and well through this sort of challenging lockdown period. So why today's topic and why the session today? Well, you know, at Watermark, we are passionate about your superpower. So what is it that's distinctive about you? And if we have the ideal assignment, how can we best help you? What is it that we need to call you for? Overlay that with today's challenging and changing and dynamic landscape, marketplace, if you like, for the job seeker. We're in a digital economy and now more than ever before, hyper connected to both future employers, past employers, and our peers, and I guess our competition, if you like, for the assignments that they're seeking. So the power of networks is your biggest ace, and it's also probably your biggest competitor. Overlay this with the COVID environment and the disruption and the volatility that we're experiencing at the moment. The landscape is constantly changing, and many of you will have read our 2020 interim survey report, which talks to the superpowers of our interim executives really playing into this environment. So now it's more important than ever that your distinctive superpowers, your unique powers, stand out and reach the broadest network. And certainly why we'll learn this morning why you cannot afford not to be present on LinkedIn. Through today's session, Renata will really instill a mindset change for all of us, talking us through how you can each make the biggest impact on LinkedIn and get that algorithm working for you. So really hope you get some valuable insights. I certainly had a few cringeworthy moments last week when we were walking through the session, thinking about some of the things I have done, which possibly weren't the most appropriate thing to be doing on LinkedIn to get the biggest impact. A few mechanics for today's session, and we do apologise for some of the confusion this morning around the timing. We had a bit of a disconnect between Eventbrite and our Zoom, but for all of you that are here now, thank you for joining us. If you need to leave part way, don't fret. We will be sending the recorded session to you all after the session. You're all on mute. We really encourage you to use the chat function. We will be taking questions from the chat function, and Renata will be able to answer those real time throughout the session. If we don't get to all of your questions, we will respond following, and obviously you can reach out to any of the partners for any further questions. So now an introduction of our guest speaker, Renata, and I'm going to read a little bit of her bio. It is super impressive. We're really fortunate to have Renata with us here. Renata is a job hunting expert, career strategist, and host of the Job Hunting podcast. Her coaching services and social media presence aim to increase career literacy for professionals in the corporate, non-for-profit, and public sectors. Renata believes that recruitment and selection are structurally biased towards the employer, and her goal is to even out the game by giving the candidate the upper hand. She's in the court of the candidate. She believes professionals should always invest in their careers to maximise the results and achieve goals faster. Renata is also the MD of Pantala, a consultancy platform for portfolio professionals, and the head of market strategy at the award-winning diversity and inclusion firm Mindtribes. She's a graduate from both Melbourne and Monash universities, has done executive programs at Melbourne Business School, Cranlana Centre for Ethical Leadership, and the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. She's a member of the AICD and fellow of the Institute of Management and Leadership. A very impressive lady, and I hope you enjoy the session this morning. Renata, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thank you, Donna. It's so awkward when somebody is reading out your bio, and it's a bit cringeworthy. It seems to me like you're talking about somebody else. Everybody, it's so nice to see 106 people here. This is so exciting. What I'm going to do now, since I've already been introduced, you know a little bit about me, is I'm going to share screen with you. So just give me a moment while I find my presentation slides and I share that with you so that we can begin talking about the topic of today. So here we go. Start from the beginning, and I have my notes. Excellent. So we're here to talk about LinkedIn, and here are my contact details. Like I said in the chat box, I hope that you connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be expecting to get in touch with many of you in the coming hours and days. And for those of you who are not here today but listening later on, we are in Melbourne in stage 4 of lockdown, so every opportunity to catch up and talk is really valuable, and LinkedIn is now, especially in Melbourne at the moment, the place to be, really. And that's what we're going to start talking about, how LinkedIn has been for quite some time really important in professionals' careers, but right now LinkedIn is king. And we're going to focus on understanding the power of LinkedIn and what it has to do, you know, what's the connection between this platform and your career. So the question that I have for you, and I'd be very keen for you to guesstimate, or if you know, to put that on the chat box, is how many individuals in Australia do you think LinkedIn has reached? You know, how many profiles of Australian professionals are available on LinkedIn? I was quite surprised when I found out last year, and I'm wondering if you have a number there in your head. And also the number of company pages on LinkedIn. That would be great for us to get a sense if you're aware. What I'm trying to work with you is this. We know that LinkedIn is important. We know it's widely used. And my goal is to move us away from that, sort of knowing that in theory and knowing that in sort of just in your head, to use that as a strategy for you to maximize your outcomes in your career, right? So LinkedIn in Australia has 11 million members. That's half our population. And it now has 280,000 companies. Companies weren't big on LinkedIn until recently. Now it's like really growing. So this is a realization that we need to come to terms with. There's no way around it. You know, very few corporate professionals, professionals in the public sector or not-for-profit can tell me that they can work without being on LinkedIn. It's really rare. Imagine not being on the platform. Now, I went through a 24 hours of being blocked from LinkedIn. You know, that's a story for a different day, but it is scary. You don't want to be in that situation. And there's no 3 strikes, you're out. You do something dumb on LinkedIn, they will kick you out of the platform, and you have to beg your way to, you know, back into it. So you don't want to be in that situation. And can you flourish in your career without it? In this realm that we operate, you know, if you've been in touch with Watermark, I'm assuming that no, you have to be there, and there's, I think, probably more that you can do to use it as an ally and not for you to be a slave of LinkedIn. And that's really what we're trying to move towards as we progress with the slides and this presentation. So the industry breakdown showcases the access that you have to a diverse number of industries, and the numbers, you know, 11 million people, 280,000 companies, also showcases the scale of the access that you have for free. You don't really even need to be a premium member or pay any sort of money to LinkedIn to access it. So it's market intelligence and a contact database that, especially for portfolio professionals like me and many of you, I'm assuming, it's really important that we have that. So making the platform work for you and become your ally and a tool that you use rather than the other way around, you being the slave of it and feeling like you have to, that's what we're trying to move towards. So the question is, what is LinkedIn good for? You know, what have you in your career used LinkedIn? What have you achieved through LinkedIn? Your biggest wins? What are you doing with LinkedIn at the moment? If you have time to put something in the chat box for us to have an understanding of how you use it before I move to, the next slide with my sort of top lists, that would be great. But I just want to share a story with you that back in 2016, I left my CEO role and I was in between jobs for a few months, and I was publishing on LinkedIn every other week. I was publishing articles, I was writing, I felt like, it was the first time that I actually wrote publicly on LinkedIn and posted full-blown articles. And what happened was a lady in the US contacted me and asked me if I could coach her. I was already coaching, so I've always coached on the side since I left the Monash MBA team. And she said, can you coach me? And she was in the US. And that blew my mind. The fact that there was somebody reading my articles so far away and who felt that connection and asked me to coach her. So I coached her for 3 months. We're still connected. And she is the reason why, I've moved my career to doing this, because I understood back then that this can be done. And LinkedIn is great, in my view, to do that, to develop that professional branding that, done consistently, as I was doing, publishing these articles and putting myself out there in a way that was very consistent, was sending a message that allowed me to be found for opportunities. Right? And I sort of tailor that with clients and with people that follow me on social media so that that can happen for you as well. Finding people is also a great way of using LinkedIn. And what I mean by that is, Donna mentioned that that I work for Mind Tribes, which is a diversity and inclusion firm. And a few months ago, a very, very large organization lost their diversity and inclusion chief. And I decided I wanted to talk to the CEO, and the CEO did not reply to my email. So what did I do? I found the EA. And I found the EA by just searching on LinkedIn. EA, name of the company, CEO. I found her and I guessed her email when I sent her an email, and I got a conversation happening with that CEO and a meeting for Mind Tribes to talk about diversity and inclusion and their next steps. So you can use it like that. Another example in terms of insight and market intelligence is, if you have a job opportunity that came out on, let's say, LinkedIn or Seek, you can find out who your manager is going to be, who you're going to be working with, and then make a decision. You can even, by knowing who these people are, because job titles say so little these days, right? You can guesstimate your salary range and make a decision if you want to apply for that job or not. I recently went through that exercise with a client, and the position looked really good on Seek, but once we kind of identified the team and everybody else and the manager, we're like, nah, let's not even go there. And we ended up not applying. So it's really important to do that. And the expanding of the network, which I find is what most people tend to do with LinkedIn, is the bottom of my list of what LinkedIn is good for, right? So I think that there is way more that you can do at the micro level, at making yourself distinctive and easily found is probably more important than just sort of sending out lots of connection invitations on LinkedIn. And that is a good lead for my other slide, which is, what is LinkedIn not good for? The cold calling and the social networking, the debating and soapboxing, that really can not only be a distraction for you, but it can work against you in terms of building that personal branding and that profile to get you found by headhunters, hiring managers, potential business opportunities, and so on. So I really think that that's something you can consider now from now on, and see if that's you've been doing these things, or if it's something that you can tweak in your LinkedIn strategy from now on. So the part two of this conversation is really looking at making LinkedIn work when you sleep, right? So how do you make the most of it without wasting your time? So now that we have understood how powerful LinkedIn can be, and how much of a tool it is, you know, like every tool, it is better for some things than others. And how can we take advantage of that? And now that's where we're going to spend a lot of our time sort of going through these next few slides, right? How are we going with the chat box, Donna? Do you have any comments there that you'd like to share with me?
Yeah, look, lots of great comments there, Renata, on how people have been using LinkedIn to reach out to networks, keeping up to date, and just as a really current source of market intel as to sort of who's who and what's going on. So yeah, so thank you for all those who are contributing. I'm making sure that I'm sort of responding to your notes too. So keep the comments coming, and certainly if you've got specific questions, please post them. In fact, one's just popped up now there, Renata, about why would you suggest not cold calling on LinkedIn? If you want to respond to that one.
Oh yeah, I think we're going to address that now, and I will show some examples. But basically, there is a lot of great cold calling that can be done in a way that shows your research and shows that you've done your research before you contacted the person. What I mentioned in that slide about cold calling is more those that it's just almost like a bot, really, right? Those messages that are meaningless, that you do it without putting any consideration on why you're reaching out to that person. But just this week, I think I don't know if I mentioned this to Donna because it just happened. A client of mine tailored a very specific message to someone who had just stepped into a role in a company that she's targeting for a job, and that got her to have an interview and to do a presentation, which happened yesterday. But I don't even consider that cold calling because she put so much effort into writing a perfectly tailored introduction, showing that she knows the company and she would like to have a chat to this person, but it was really well tailored. So it's more like the bot-like that you see every morning when you wake up and there's like 10 different people on LinkedIn trying to connect with you, none of whom seems to have looked at your profile. Okay, let's look into this. So using LinkedIn to take maximum advantage of it as a tool, a strategic tool to develop your career. First, I'm using the words that I know Donna and Jacinta love, superpowers, and how can you showcase your superpowers, right? It may sound shallow to you, but the first thing that you've got to do is have a great photo, people. You know, we're in stage 4 lockdown in Melbourne, as I said before. You know, we're not showing our faces anywhere in the CBD, on Collins Street, on places where we used to work. We're all at home, and that photo on LinkedIn is more important than ever. So start there. And I say this because I think people just haphazardly just find a photo, put it there, doesn't really consider how important that is to what is really your landing page, your website. It is, you know, your LinkedIn profile is your portfolio right there. So that photo needs to tell a story of who you are, needs to look like you, not, you know, 20 years ago. I'm a big fan of color. I'm not a big fan of black and white. I'm a big fan of smiles and, some sort of personal touch, but basically a very professional looking photo that's aligned with the sort of work that you do. So I think that that's really important. Also, be careful with the photos that you have on other social media platforms that you might be with. So, you know, you might not know this, but even if your Facebook is private, that photo that you have on your Facebook profile is also publicly available, right? So you have to have a good photo there. Sorry about that, just jumping slides. Let me go back. And we were just talking before about image and Zoom and all of that. And I'd like to sort of remind people also that Zoom now is where you connect with people. So the more professional your Zoom environment can be, you know, as a reflection of your profession, your sector, what you want to do for that company, and also showcasing your ability to work remotely. If somebody is looking for a job and you're going through a job interview via Zoom or any other platform like that, it is good for them to know that you have a space that you can work that is yours. You know, it's all right if you get interrupted or something happens, you're at home anyway, but still think about those visual cues that will lead people to make assumptions about you and your professionalism. Photos on LinkedIn get, good photos get 9 times more connections, 21 times more views, 36 times more messages, and it can get you a job. Okay, so just let's think about that a little bit more. The other really important real estate is the headline. It's blue chip real estate, and you can only fit so many words in there, but I will show some examples for you of people that have used it really well. I tend to go towards maximizing it and use it as much as you can, but being very crystal clear about what you do and who you are in that sort of important real estate that the headline is right under your name. The About section is one that I know Donna and Jacinta really look into, and they really like candidates to have a great About section. It's really about being concise, being crystal clear, having a call to action. If you're a portfolio professional like I am, inviting people to email you on the About section instead of just having your email linked at the top is really important, because you're looking for opportunities, you're looking for contracts. Make it easy for people to get in touch with you. I am personally a very big fan of the experience. So those are the two things that I think people neglect the most: the photo, which I think is a shame, and the work experience details. Details under each work experience allows you to have more extra keywords there for searchability for people like recruiters and headhunters. It allows you to tell a story about what you do, but also have the power of the narrative is yours. So let's say you have worked at PwC and you were a partner. You could have done so many things as a partner at PwC. You know, I don't even know which area you were in, if it's consulting or auditing, right? So by using a paragraph or two to tell people who you were reporting to, let's say if it was a director role or a management role, and what sort of highlights were during that time that you were doing that job, allows you to tell a story and really build a lovely sort of thread that leads you to where you are now. Even if you've done a whole bunch of things as project manager of NAB, you can focus on LinkedIn in highlighting only the bits that you want to highlight to lead you to, let's say, you're interested in agile now that you are a senior exec or whatever. So, you know, I'm just kind of using examples of how you can build a story through the work experience under each of your jobs.
Renata, sorry, just a couple of questions that have popped up. I might, before we move on from this one. One was in the headline area. Do you recommend role-specific headline or more value proposition-based headline?
Oh, excellent question. So let's move to the next slide so I can show that, because what we have here in the next slide are some examples, right? And I don't make recommendations that are general. I like to recommend things that are specific. And I think that differentiation between role or keywords really depends on your sector, what your peers are doing. If you're ambitious and you're going up in your career and you want the next level up, you know, if I'm working with a client, I would usually do some research with the client on people that have done this before them, that have come before them, and identify who those leaders, sector leaders are, and see how they present themselves on LinkedIn, right? So I think that you have to kind of do that research. There is no best practice for this. In fact, I sometimes get really concerned about a lot of information that's coming from America about how to use LinkedIn, or other countries, and they can be very informal or too formal and not really adjusted to the Australian corporate environment, but most importantly, not adjusted to your sector. So these three people are not my clients. I wouldn't show my clients' portfolio or connections to you, but these are people on LinkedIn that I'm connected with that have great landing pages. They have great LinkedIn profiles. And in my view, in my personal opinion, and you can see that they use the headlines very differently. And Meryl maximized the real estate, and she used all of the words there that she was allowed to, because there's a maximum number. And she's a portfolio professional. Fabian is a chief marketing officer, so his style is more emotive storytelling, and you know, he's not looking for work, but even by putting chief marketing officer there and listing some of his accomplishments, he will be easily searchable for headhunters if he needs to. And same with Michelle. So chief digital officer, smart city lead. I mean, Michelle is more of a minimalist, but that's all she needs to say. You get it. You know, you go to her profile and you know what she's all about. It's crystal clear. She doesn't need to add anything else. There's no noise. It's very interesting how you can do that very differently with each of those profiles. You can see Michelle is very minimal about her about section, but you read it and it's done. You know what she's good at. You know what she has done. Fabian is a storyteller, and Meryl is dot pointing her experience and really educating future clients on what she can do for them. But they all have great profiles, and more than that, they all have great activity that is amplifying their profiles. So the profile becomes really a landing page once you do that activity that is consistent with your superpowers. So let's say in the case of Michelle, Michelle is consistent in sharing and posting, liking and commenting on things that have to do with smart city, urban planning, digital innovation, and local government policies. So that's where she, you know, you look at her activity, it's all about that. Hardly ever she goes off course. Same for Fabian and same for Meryl. So they are all very aligned with their superpowers, which means their activity is spreading themselves to connections above and beyond their first connections, and people then think, oh, what Meryl has said is really interesting, let me check her profile, and then they land on her landing page. So that's what is important about the connection between the landing page and the activity. Okay. I have
Renata,
yeah.
sorry, a quick one, just a question that's come up, which I think is an interesting one, which I'd love your views on. In terms of sort of using LinkedIn, do you think the approach and how you potentially set your profile up should be different for those looking for full-time employment versus portfolio roles? What would be your thoughts on this?
Yes, absolutely. And it would be also different if you were looking for net roles. As opposed to or you know, net and portfolio probably a bit more similar than full time, and the differences will be subtle for those who are not really sort of really go deep into LinkedIn. The subtle differences would be in how you blend your current employment. And so if you are Fabian and you are currently working for Monash, you are also a champion for Monash. So there is a bit of, you know, his personal branding and his superpowers and the importance of him developing that narrative that will get him employed above and beyond his time at Monash, but also the importance of sharing the Monash brand, especially because he's in marketing, through LinkedIn. So there's a little blend of that. The other thing that I think is important, and that you know, it's sometimes something I have to work with clients, is activity, right? So if you are somebody who is moving from one full-time permanent role to another full-time permanent role, you really don't need to do a lot of your own postings, your own articles, unless you're a chief economist, for example, or a policy wonk like I am. But you only need to like things, you know. I haven't shared a profile here, but I'm happy to type in the comment boxes later. Mohit Bhagava, who I interviewed for my podcast, is another chief marketing officer. He has never posted anything. All he does is likes, and sometimes he comments. But everything he likes and comments has to do with marketing. If his brother, who is a naturopath, I'm just making this up, you know, decides to post something on LinkedIn, Mohit wouldn't like that. Why? Because he understands the LinkedIn algorithm. And what you need to do is you need to feed the algorithm to get back what you want from LinkedIn. If you start feeding that you like naturopathy or human resources and all of that, the feeding will go berserk and will start feeding you to lots of people that will not really be beneficial for your profession. So you need to be consistent with your messaging and feed the algorithm.
Renata, on the algorithm, sorry if I can just jump in, the questions come up there. In what sections do you need to be really mindful of those keywords to get pulled into the algorithm? So it may be a little bit about what the algorithm's actually sort of pulling from there. You've touched on that with some of the likes and the commenting. Are there sections where there's keywords that need to be noted so people are attracting the right opportunities to them?
Look, I wish I knew, you know, and the thing about these platforms is that you listen to this, it will be available publicly on Watermark's website, I believe. If you listen to this a year from now, it could be obsolete because these things change a lot. And right now, I think the best bet, because, you know, I'm not a LinkedIn data analyst person who works there, knows everything of how to make the most out of this for you. But the best is to use all of the boxes that you can to have those keywords there. And when you are posting, and you know, people like Meryl, who like me is a portfolio career person, she needs to post. She needs to share her thought leadership and position herself as a leader in her field. In her case, it's, you know, energy and sustainability. You need to use the hashtags as well to support you being found on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is very good at providing you with the hashtag. So as soon as Meryl will type something about energy, she will hashtag sustainability, and as she starts typing sustainability, LinkedIn will provide her a list of things that are easy to search for. But in terms of maximizing your profile, I think a little bit on each of the sections is great. What I have usually found is people usually jumble up all of the keywords and then, or they spread themselves too thinly by having, let's say, too many skills and endorsements, you know, like a full list. Go to Michelle Fitzgerald's skills and endorsements and you will see that she has like 10. I would still think that if somebody was headhunting for a chief digital officer, they would find her anyway, right? So you don't have to spread yourselves too thinly, and you shouldn't use the words that everybody else is using. Like, you know, if everybody else in their about section says that they're good at business transformation, then that's no good use for Jacinta and Donna, right? You need to be more specific about what you can do for a business. Does that answer your question, Donna, I think?
I think it does. And Renata, there's been a bit of a thread around, you know, how LinkedIn's recently introduced the open to opportunities sort of circle. And what's your views on that and the impression that that might give a would-be employer, and or using language in a headline that's sort of seeking opportunities? Does that invoke a negative connotation, or just any comments you have around that?
Well, yes, that's something that I've been talking a lot about with clients and with my followers on, you know, I have a Facebook page, and I have a private Facebook group where I, you know, make it private, and I do it there because I don't want to have those discussions on LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn is also about me as a profession, and I wear too many hats, and I'm assuming that many of my clients wouldn't want to have those discussions on LinkedIn. So I have a private Facebook group for that conversation. I don't have any clients yet with that green banner. Oh, I lie. I have one. I have one in Africa, and she has decided, and we have that discussion where it depends on your seniority, it depends on your sector. If your sector is more of an informal sector, and we have that discussion, and then often we have decided not to, but we make ourselves available to recruiters only, right? So and make the most out of that list of jobs and sectors and types of roles that you're interested in, and make that available to recruiters only. But when you decide to make it available to everybody, that's when the green banner shows up. And it has been a bit of some people have opted out because as soon as they realize that the green banner will show up, they don't feel comfortable with that, and they pull off. But then, you know, my clients are probably more like you who are listening to this, and that, you know, in the corporate sector in Melbourne, Sydney, we are a bit more conservative. Maybe if you were in New York or San Francisco, you would feel more comfortable with the green banner. So that's a conversation that we need to have. And I want to correct myself as well. I have clients that are in sectors where all of their peers and their superiors don't have anything written on their about section. You know, usually government officials, for example, wouldn't have anything in their about section. And so we don't do the about section because you know, we want to, again, it's that thing about tailoring the LinkedIn for your purposes and your needs and your sector and your industry. So finding that common sense and that intuition, and to, you know, and Renata said this, Renata said that, but if it doesn't work for your sector and your branding, then you need to opt out. I think that that's really what the message is here for me, but it requires doing a bit of research. I want to move on to the next slide because I think it will help as well to answer some of the earlier questions about the cold calling. And that's really using LinkedIn to do the micro level networking. So targeting your message on, you know, how you want to connect with somebody, why you want to connect with somebody. And in the activity, when you're posting or liking, why are you doing it? So be strategic. So one thing that I often tell my clients to do is this. You can use LinkedIn passively. So whatever comes your way on your feed, you like and you comment, or you can be proactive in your activity. So let's say you are targeting 10 companies that you really want to work with as a contractor or as a permanent employee. You find who the key individuals they are, and then you follow them and you look at their posts and you comment and you like. So you can do that as well. So be proactive because you're again teaching LinkedIn on what you like and what you want to see, but also you are seeking out the activity that is important to you rather than LinkedIn sort of feeding you with the activity it thinks you want to see. And the other thing is you don't need to follow people. You can You don't need to connect with people. You can follow them if you don't want to connect with them. So let's say you are currently employed, but you're thinking about looking for work. You can follow individuals like headhunters or organizations like Watermark without having to connect with like 30 different headhunters. And I think that that is something that you can think about. So that it doesn't sort of become too conspicuous at the top of your LinkedIn that you have all of these headhunters that are connected to you. You know, it's just some little details like that that can make a difference in how you use LinkedIn. And also, you know, sometimes you don't know that person, you have nothing to say to that person yet to make a meaningful connection, but you can start following them, which means their feed will come to you. And then eventually you might find something that connects both of you and make a connection if that's your goal. I will show you a couple of examples now. So the examples on your left are, to my view, a complete disconnect. And I get messages like this a lot. You know, a message that starts like, you know, I just want to connect with you, and then the next you connect, and the next thing you know, you are into this sort of playbook. So they're trying to get you as a client, they're trying to connect with you somehow, but the playbook is completely meaningless. Or sometimes it's a message that is not connected to my profile in any way, like I'm not in mining, so it didn't make any sense to get all this information about mining. Whereas this person here, it may look to you as if it's not spot on, but it was back then when I was in that job, a spot on message. And we ended up hiring this consultant on a very large contract with Monash University. They had never worked with Monash before. And what this person did was every time I replied, they gave me even a better reason to hire them. Like he was invest more and say, okay, she's interested. Let me do a little bit more digging and research so that the next message out is even more enticing to Renata. And that kept going for a couple of weeks until I said, yeah, I need to hire you. So that can happen. The other thing is, you know, making a connection. So I just got up this morning and I have a connection from two people that I've never met before, and they didn't send me any messages. And I have a connection that sounds a lot like this, you know, somebody that listened to a podcast this week and really connected to it. And I get those, and I really enjoy that, you know. Or they read something that I posted. I don't know this person, but yes, I'm much more interested in connecting with this person than this person that got the name of my podcast wrong and probably didn't listen to it. Another thing is when you're making that first connection with someone, do what, you know, my client did, and I can't say that I did the work for her. She did the work herself. You know, if you're writing a long email, a long introduction email, it needs to be crystal clear why. Why are you writing this long email to someone you don't know? This long message on LinkedIn to someone you don't know? In her case is, you know, I can see you just started in this business. I've worked with this business before. I'd like to represent you in my country. Can we have a conversation? Yes, right? Whereas this information here was completely disconnected, too many questions, and it just made no sense to me why I should waste time. Whereas, you know, I think sometimes a smaller conversation, which all of these led to me actually helping these people out, and organizing a call to all of these people, but it was just more targeted and more interesting to me. It showed me that they had done some research or they had connected with me in some way. So I gave my time, you know, sometimes 30 minutes to an hour to help them out eventually. So let me just pull this away. Sorry, guys. So the other thing that I often tell people to do is to step away from LinkedIn as soon as you make a good connection, okay? Or if you have a great connection on LinkedIn, it's a former colleague of yours, former boss, and there is a new job or an achievement, a milestone that they've achieved, like it on LinkedIn, say congratulations on LinkedIn, and then get your phone and give them a call, and just say, I just saw what you've done. How fantastic. How are you doing? So moving away, stepping away from the platform to have that conversation somewhere else is way more professional in my view. Calling people is also something really important that we all do even before this pandemic, but more and more I find that it really leads to opportunities, whereas LinkedIn tends to be an end in itself, and you don't want that to happen. The other thing is the etiquette of LinkedIn. So we're learning the etiquette of working from home, of doing a lot of Zooms, and LinkedIn is the same. And this thing about you connecting with people without knowing who they are or introducing yourselves properly, I think is not good. It would be the same as you walking out of a lift into a room full of people. Let's say you go to a conference or a seminar or webinar in the future, and you just start handing out your business cards without even opening your mouth. You don't do that. You wouldn't do that. So you don't do that on LinkedIn as well. I'm giving you permission to do that today because I'm inviting you to connect, and I know who you are because you're here on LinkedIn. But that's often what I do as well. I would go to a conversation. I've had one with Vic government a couple of days ago. 9 people, I just got their names and I went on LinkedIn and I connected with them and I told them, guys, just letting you know I'm connecting with you on LinkedIn. Okay, so I don't have to write the message. So that's something that I do, especially now in this age of Zooms. The other thing that you can do is adjust your social media to different platforms. I'm going to show you 2 great examples of how you can do that, because I'm assuming I'm talking to portfolio people that have, other hobbies and other interests, and this is what you can do. This person is not a portfolio career person. He is the Vice Chancellor of La Trobe. He's an awesome guy. I don't know him personally that well. I've met him a few times, but his LinkedIn profile is, as you would imagine, quite academic and serious and straightforward, black and white. You go to his Twitter account, however, and it's hilarious. I love following John Dewar on Twitter every morning. And right at the beginning of the pandemic, he would wake up and say, how is everyone doing? Talking to his La Trobe community, of course, is everyone okay? If you're not okay, let me know, And a former colleague of mine from Monash tweeted a reply saying, John, if you continue to be this nice, you will find my resume in your inbox very soon. But and you can see he loves movies. So this is the Great Lebowski, and this one is Zoolander. He will always quote movies, and he can be more casual and informal, and let his personality show on a different platform, and he understands that. So he uses LinkedIn for very serious matters and uses Twitter to express himself more freely. And here we have Katrona Pollard, who is a fantastic portfolio career person. She has a great profile as well. So have a look at her about section. Is really good, really strong. And her entire LinkedIn is fantastic. And look at her Instagram. Her Instagram is all about her art. So I'm just saying, you can have those opportunities to tailor the message, tailor the tone, and compartmentalize different aspects of your portfolio by using different platforms. And I think that that's great. Sometimes you go to LinkedIn and a CEO or some of her clients have actually bought some of her art and they're showing it on LinkedIn, which is really cute. But mostly she's on Instagram. So in summary, a successful LinkedIn strategy is really about spending less time on LinkedIn, but spending time on LinkedIn, because somebody told me when I started my own portfolio career, it's 70% of your time will be business development and 30% of your time will be actually doing the work. And I think you can actually make that, of a better a division if you use LinkedIn strategically. So it's operating in the background to feed you with clients, to feed you with opportunities. 1 hour a day should be enough for you to do that. But use, probably batch some time right now when we're all sort of in this pandemic to do that exercise of auditing and reviewing your LinkedIn to make sure that it's distinctive, that it's not like anybody else's LinkedIn, that it's just yours and it's promoting your superpowers. Working at that micro level, not at scale, to identify people that you really want to connect with, that you really want to follow, that are important for you, in the same way that you would use Salesforce or any sort of CRM solution. Qualify your leads on LinkedIn and work alongside your other comms and social media channels and not in isolation. And develop your activities so that you're not a passive user of LinkedIn, but an active user, so that you're always communication with a clear and distinct strategy. That would be my recommendation. And look, this is I wanted to have time now for questions, but before I do that, I just wanted to invite you to follow me, connect with me on my website, and if you join, I'll send you a weekly newsletter, which Donna gets, and I think some other people at Watermark get as well. I do a LinkedIn audit as one of the services that I provide. But most importantly, my podcast, which is available everywhere, so you can easily find it. We're having 4 live events happening during the Victorian Digital Innovation Festival. And I have these amazing speakers, and it will be the first time that I allow an audience to be participating in the recording of the podcast, and the audience can then ask questions, and we can have a bit of a Q&A and a chat with these amazing people that I'm interviewing. So if you want to come, just click on the link. It's on Eventbrite, and I can send you, if you find me on LinkedIn, I can send you the link as well.
Thank you, Renata. This has been hugely informative, and there are some questions. I did a call out for questions, so there's a couple I might just sort of fire off to you if you'd like to respond, and we'll see how many we can sort of get through in the last few minutes. So firstly, would you recommend having your mobile number listed on your LinkedIn profile? There were some comments there about people getting some unwanted calls, sales-related calls. What's your view on that?
That's a very good question. I've always had my mobile number on LinkedIn up until very recently. And the reason why I took it out is because now I'm doing more business to consumer, and I'm about to launch a coaching service that's at scale. So I became a little bit afraid of having my mobile there, but I do have my mobile on my website, and I hardly ever get any sort of problems with that. I don't get any problems with that. I discuss that with my clients all the time. If you look at the profiles that I've used as an example here, I think Catriona and Meryl do have their mobiles there. No, Catriona does have her mobile there. I don't think Meryl does. So I'm just looking at the 2 portfolio professionals that were listed there. I have my email, and I've never had, more problems or spam because of my email being on LinkedIn. So it's interesting. It's not to say that it won't happen in the future, or it won't happen with you, but I've never had a big problem having my mobile on LinkedIn.
Thank you. And some great commentary there around one of the executives who said only responds to articles and comments on things that really amplify sort of what's in their court. The question has come up, how often do you feel it's appropriate to be commenting and sharing and liking articles? Is that sort of a daily occurrence? Is that sort of, a couple of times a week? Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's whatever you can do consistently. So if you do every day, it's like going on a diet or going to the gym or deciding you want to do you want to have an exercise routine. If you start, doing every day, and then by the end of that week you forget about it and you don't do it for 2 weeks, it's not going to work for you. So my preference personally is for it to be done every day or every other day, just so that you build the habit of being consistent. And it's really not about you. It's about giving back. LinkedIn, it's a lot about giving back. It's about liking posts of people that have been your colleagues, that have been great bosses, that you really admire, and commenting in such a way that's not just any comment, but adding value to that discussion. If they posted an article, if they shared an information, you would post something that adds value and shows your thought leadership. But you're also helping them, because everybody that posts on LinkedIn, they want people to like their posts. They want people to comment, right? So there's a lot of that giving back, and it's paying it forward. What will happen then is, once you do that, your connection will see your post and your like, and you will show up on their feed. These people are not connected with you, but they now know of you. So that's their first impression of you. Yeah, and you have to kind of be consistent with the messaging there.
Great one. A couple of questions coming through from earlier in the session when we were talking about the About and Experience session, and I apologise, we may not get through all the questions, but we will actively follow up. One question around whether the About and Experience profile should be written in the first or third person, and any comments around what might be too long in terms of the experience. I'd certainly played back a comment that as long as it kind of plays to your superpowers and the opportunities you'd like to be connected for, and that's kind of in there, then that will be important. But any comments that you might have on that?
Well, LinkedIn will cut you if they think it's too long. You have a maximum number of there's a word limit on every box. So that kind of tells you what to expect. The About section works really well if your first couple of sentences is your elevator pitch. It needs to be something distinctive. Usually what I have found with my clients, usually working on their LinkedIn profiles or resumes and cover letters, is they start a sentence and then the juicy, yummy, awesome bits are the final sentence of that paragraph. And I'm like, whoops, let's move that forward. And that happens because that's how you think. You kind of start sort of warming up and then you come up with the juice. That juice needs to be your first or second sentence, right? And then you expand and you justify your superpowers, and then you list a dot point. Normally that's what my preference is, of what you can hit the ground running. If somebody hires you, they can be sure you can do X, Y, and Z, and you end it with a call to action. That would be the best practice template for an About section, and I would write that in the first person. I really like LinkedIn to be personal, first person, this is me, this is who I am, and then you become a bit more formal in your resume formatting and cover letter formatting, I suppose.
Yeah, perfect. Look, thank you, Renata. I think we're sort of right on time there for an hour. There are a couple of other questions, and I apologise for those that we haven't got to, but we will certainly review the question log following this and make sure we reach out to you with the answers where we can answer them. Renata, thank you so much for your time. As you'll see from the chat comments there, it's been a really insightful, practical session. I think everyone on the call, and thank you for the 110 who have come on the webinar today, have taken some insights from that, which hopefully will help them kind of amplify their superpowers and connect out to more people on their profile. As Renata said, please connect with her. I do subscribe to her weekly email. The podcasts are fascinating, really entertaining and interesting speakers, and always some great insights. So thank you, Renata, for all that you're doing in that space. Some really great conversations. It always amazes me who you get access to, but there you go. That's Renata doing as she says and reaching out to her network. As mentioned, we will send this to you, the recorded session, so feel free to go back through and you'll have access to all of the slides and comments there. For those that haven't connected with some of the partners here at Watermark, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn too. We'd love to be connected. And we look forward to supporting you, you know, further at Watermark on your journey. Please reach out and frequently update us on where you're at too. If you happen to land a new assignment or work, great to connect with you and sort of see where you're at. So thank you all for your attendance today. We will sign off now. I hope you have a great day. Continue to stay safe and well in this environment, and we look forward to you joining us again at our next webinar, which we'll advertise out in due course. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.